This man hated religion obsessively, so much so that it led to him taking the life of a reverend and then posing his body in a sick and twisted display. Well, hello, stranger. This is part 69 of the England's Whole Lifers list, and today I'm going to be telling you about Stephen Farrow. Viewer discretion, as always, is advised. Stephen Farrow was born in 1964. He was the youngest of 6 children and was a very difficult child, according to his mother. His mother actually said that of all her 6 children, she would rather have all of the first 5 again than just one of Stephen. Well, damn, we're off to a good start. He was so much of a handful that he was sent home from his first ever day at school. He had a hatred for his father, who was very strict, but loved his mother, who he described as placid. At age 10, he set fire to a church altar and watched it burn. Later in life, Farrow claimed to have been the victim of an essay committed by somebody that was connected to the church. And he developed a real hatred for religion, which he himself put down to that incident. There is no evidence, and nobody's ever been convicted of the alleged crime. Indeed, some people have theorised that Farrow fabricated it to use as an excuse. I personally think that a claim of essay against the church should always be taken seriously because they have a terrible history of abusing children. Of course, I think all claims of essay should be taken seriously, but nobody should be exempt, especially not large institutions. So Farrow reached adulthood and he couldn't establish and maintain significant relationships, and he suffered severely with his mental health. In 1994, he was convicted of aggravated burglary committed in the home of a 77-year-old woman in the West Midlands. He was assessed by a forensic psychiatrist, and Farrow admitted to some extremely disturbing fantasies. He said he imagined himself violently raping young girls and then went into specific detail about another fantasy of his. And this is pretty graphic, strangers, heads up. Farrow said he fantasized about breaking into the homes of elderly couples, tying up the husband and raping the woman in front of him, and then taking the husband's life in front of the wife before finally taking her life by hanging, suffocation, or stabbing. Dude, what the I told you it was sick and I told you it was specific. And if you're a true crimer like me, stranger, then I know exactly what happened to your brain. It went ding, ding, ding. We've heard of this one before. And you would be absolutely right. The Golden State Killer, otherwise known as the original Night Stalker, who was active in the late 70s, early 80s in America, did this exact thing. Now, of course, I don't know if Farrow knew about the Night Stalker or why that weird specific coincidence has happened in these stories, but oh, it gave me the heebie-jeebies. But anyway, look, going back to Farrow's little chats with the forensic psychiatrist, he also claimed to have taken the life of a backpacker in Devon when he was 25 years old. And honestly, stranger, that seems to be it. He mentioned it and it was like, okay, I'll just write that down in my. Like, I don't know if that was ever properly investigated or what came of it, if it was found to be true or false. It's just another scary loose end in this case. The psychiatrist didn't know if Farrow was desperately seeking help or exaggerating for attention, but he did believe that he was suffering from a psychopathic disorder. Interestingly, stranger, there are 20 characteristics that make up a psychopath. And if each were given 2 points, then Farrow would have scored 31 out of 40. I think it's fair to say he's a psychopath. And his explosive violence would soon burst free of its flimsy constraints in brutal and tragic circumstances. His hatred of religion was bubbling away at the surface, and Farrow committed a burglary in a vacant home in Thornbury sometime either in late December 2011 or early January 2012. And he left a note saying, quote, "Be thankful you did not come back or we would have killed you, Christian scum. I hate God." And I can tell you that the inhabitants of the cottage felt no way about this because they were not religious people. I wondered about that we, though. He said we would have killed you in the note. Maybe he was just trying to throw police off the scent, but that is just not a feasible explanation in my opinion, and I'm about to show you why. This is the note, and you can see it's been secured to the table using knives, and you can see the handwriting is distinctive. To me, that's not someone that's trying to shy away or hide. Maybe he thought by saying we that it would make him less of a suspect, but again, I just can't find the logic. Maybe his extreme mental health issues were a factor, but I cannot find any information on Farrow mentioning multiples of himself or seeing himself in a fragmented enough way to consider himself a we. Maybe someone else was there. I don't know, man, but I got stuck on that we. I stayed there for a while trying to figure out what that was about. Lucky for that couple in Thornbury, they weren't in and nobody was hurt. But the escalation from there is dramatic, and Farrow's next crime is murder. On the 4th of January 2012, the body of a 77-year-old woman was found in her isolated cottage in Worcestershire. And that lady was Betty Yates, a much-loved member of her community. The details are gruesome and gut-wrenching. Farrow somehow got into Betty's home and he grabbed her walking stick. He struck her to the back of her head with it, incapacitating her. Betty was then taken and laid down, a pillow placed carefully under her injured head. After Farrow had placed Betty the way he wanted her, he stabbed her 4 times, leaving the knife in the final wound. By the 13th of February, Farrow was back in Thornbury near Bristol, again with murder on his mind. This is Reverend John Suddards. He had moved from Essex to Thornbury just 6 months prior. Farrow got into the vicar's house, stabbed him repeatedly, and then made a sick and twisted display with the body before sitting down to drink the Reverend's beer and watch his television. During the attack, the vicar had cried out, "I'm dying," to which Farrow had replied, "Well, fucking die then, hurry up." After death, Farrow had positioned Reverend Suddards in front of a mirror with a canvas of Christ propped up so that it appeared that they were looking at each other. Party poppers, a condom wrapper, and pornography were all littered on and around the body. A copy of the New Testament, open to the letter of Jude, was left on the vicar's chest. A calendar of a partially naked man was covering the bottom half of the Reverend's body. The judge would later say that Farrow did that to further humiliate Reverend Suddards and desecrate his memory. But police were quick on this one and had Farrow in custody by the 19th of February. He pleaded not guilty to both murders but admitted to the burglary. And he later pleaded guilty to the manslaughter of Reverend Suddards on the grounds of diminished responsibility. But he was found guilty on both counts of murder, no diminished anything. He was told that even with his mental health struggles, he knew right from wrong and he was a sadistic killer. And so the judge sentenced him to a whole life order. Farrow was 48 years old at the time. And I know what you're probably thinking, stranger, that means that he's got a long time to go then. But no. Well, I mean, yes, he did serve a whole life order technically, but he did 10 years in prison before dying in HMP Frankland in 2023 at the age of 58. And that is the very disturbing and deeply uncomfortable case of Stephen Farrow. Of course, rest in peace to the victims of this case, Betty Yates and the Reverend John Suddards. And as always, strangers, please let me know what you think of this one in the comments. I have questions. Do you think Farrow was working alone? Do you think he was telling the truth about his childhood? Do you think he should have gone to prison or been committed to a hospital? Do you believe that he was really mentally ill? Tell me everything. And as ever, if you've stayed with me up until now, then thank you for watching and I will see you for the next one.